Members, my suggestion is if you have 20 minutes or so, we try to wrap up the next, which is the statutory exemption language. Mr. Johnston? And we try to wrap that up, get the public comment on that, and then have us come back tomorrow morning for the rest. That'll give the staff time to also try to digest what we've said so far and an opportunity to hopefully see if there's some clarification you need tomorrow that we might provide. Okay?
Agreed.
All right, members, would you turn to page 8, please, of the matrix? Page 8. Covered actions, exemptions, and exclusions. This, again, is in the covered action section. Joe, if you would please kick this off.
Yes, we had numerous comments from many, many parties suggesting that all statutorily or categorically exempt projects ought to be exempt as covered actions. And we are recommending language that says, barring unusual circumstances, which conveniently is actually the language that's in the statute about the CEQA exemption, unusual circumstances, that we should, in fact, exempt them, because when we went through the list, and I got to give Dan a lot of credit here, he went through every single one of the categorically and statutorily exempt projects. There were a couple that looked like they might be an issue. The one we mentioned specifically here is local government general plan amendments. So if there's a general plan amendment in the Delta, we expect that's something no offense to Supervisor Natoli, that's something we probably don't want to exempt. But virtually everything else we think is likely to be exempt because it doesn't have a significant impact. And Dan went through the whole list. And we do have that caveat there, which is the same as the legislative and administrative caveat about unusual circumstances. Another option would be to go through the entire list. I think it's about 200 altogether and try and do them one by one. We didn't think that was appropriate. Or we could just leave it the way it was. We thought that wasn't helpful, so we're recommending we go with this.
Felicia.
That's in addition, yes.
Okay.
So it adds to the exemptions that we already have. We exempt ministerial actions.
When you say this, that you mean option 1 appearing on page 8?
Option 1,
okay.
Appearing on page 8, is an addition to what's in the current draft of a plan, which exempts ministerial projects and one-year water transfers.
And emergency.
Yeah. Just taking a look at the language, I just wanted to add one clarification that the language that if you chose option 1, it would probably look a bit different. So we would
that was my question.
rejigger it because I don't know where the language.
I didn't understand.
I don't understand it either.
Okay, good. So you'd have to clarify it more
yes.
in the spirit of the whole discussion we've had today about trying to be as clear as possible.
Absolutely.
So people can interpret it.
Absolutely. And Joe's preview was accurate that we've already decided in the 5th staff draft that we were going to administratively exclude ministerial actions under CEQA. We've heard from stakeholders that it's more in keeping with the intent of the statute that you also include statutory and categorical exemptions. Joe is right. Borrowing from CEQA, unless there are unusual circumstances that show there's a significant impact, those would be exempted as well from the plan. And we come back to you with good language.
Figure it out. Okay, Joe. That's later, I think.
Yeah, that's a bit of a different issue. Their issue is one I think, Pat, that you're familiar with regard to a quirk in how they deal with leases on port property, and the fact that some of their leases, because they're discretionary, could potentially be covered actions, even though some of the underlying lease uses might be ministerial.
Right.
And so we've been working with them to try to.
Yeah, I know you have. Dan
right.
came down.
Yeah. So I think we've made progress, but
okay.
That isn't this.
Joe, can let me just ask one question, not about option number 1, but the language in the statutory exemption section. We retain what you'd proposed before, an exemption for temporary water transfers for up to 1 year in duration. Transfer temporary water transfers are reoccurring year after year from the same buyers and sellers, blah, blah, blah. It raises the point I had asked you to take a look at is if it is the temporary nature of the transfer that, in your opinion, justifies an exclusion, how then do you deal with a transfer that is temporary in name only, but in fact continues eternally or permanently or for a long period of time? And it's just my concern. I want to make sure that you think about it and then say, well, we've decided we like water transfers so much that we're even in favor of it. I'd listen to that argument. Or if not, I'd hate to find...
I don't think we'd make that argument. We, in fact, one of the things that didn't rise to the top level of this, although we've, I think, talked about it before as a recommendation from the EIR, was that we put together a work group to look at transfers and what we can do to administratively help enhance the ability of transfers to work. That does not include skirting the law, my words, by just doing a continual evergreen water transfer year after year after year. From my perspective, that is a long-term transfer by another name and would not be exempt.
Well, the reason I raise that is in the DWR comment, they noted that there's an existing water code section that simply says you can do that kind of stuff as long as it's not unreasonably impacting the environment. Now, that is a different and far lesser standard than the co-equal goals. I mean, can you guys chew this one over, think about it, and get back to us on it? I don't know. I have no idea what the right approach is because I like water transfers, but I prefer to have them clearly stated up front for what they are, as opposed to encourage folks who would just seek to circumvent the system through artifice.
We will look at it.
Thank you. Randy.
As a practical matter, many of the transfers are based on hydrologic conditions, and therefore they may reoccur year after year, but they're based on current hydrologic conditions and available water. So to suggest that somebody might use that to shirk legalities, I think it's more of an operational issue.
Pat? No. Okay. All right.
Mr.
Yes, Don.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
again, I don't need an answer. I know the hour's late, but just on this, again, I can have some more conversation with staff. I'm just trying to understand on the local government general plan amendments that the criteria would still have to apply where it be either in whole or in part in the delta because...
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is that there are differing times. There's the more general amendment to your general plan, which applies to your whole jurisdiction, and then there are those that would amend your land use plan or your zoning index that would take into account a particular request to change a category from, say, ag to ag-res or ag-res to suburban type of use. And so there are kind of those. There's the larger. Your general plan governs a whole host of things and has many chapters in it. So.
Right.
Okay. So but that'd be whole or in part. But if you
in the delta. So if you do something in Natomas,
yeah, Natomas or okay.
It's not covered.
That helps, and it may help if I think Doug going back to the other counties. They want to take a look at this, but I think that
what's done in Natomas stays in Natomas. Is that what we're saying?
Oh no, it affects other parts of the world. I can assure you.
Yeah, right.
But that's a city.
Okay.
Though.